The wedding invitation arrived in a cream envelope with elaborate calligraphy. Inside, a note from my sister Victoria. Ceremony at 2 p.m. Family only. We've told guests you're traveling for work. Easier than explaining why you're not attending. I hadn't been uninvited. I'd been erased. Victoria was marrying Lord Edmund Hartley, a minor British aristocrat whose family owned estates in Hampshire and maintained connections to the royal household. The wedding was being held at a historic manor, covered by society magazines, and attended by everyone who mattered in Victoria's carefully curated social circle. I was Charlotte Pemberton, the family member who didn't matter. At 32, I'd grown accustomed to being edited out of important family moments. Victoria was elegant, connected, married into aristocracy. My older brother James ran a successful hedge fund and moved in elite financial circles. They photographed well, knew which fork to use at state dinners, understood the unspoken rules of high society. I was Charlotte, who worked in royal administration, a description my mother used that made it sound like I scheduled tours at Buckingham Palace. What they didn't know was that I was the deputy private secretary to Queen Elizabeth II. At 29, I'd become one of the youngest people ever appointed to the royal household senior staff. I managed the Queen's official correspondence, coordinated state visits, advised on constitutional matters, and worked directly with the Prime Minister's office on affairs of state. I made £140,000 annually, lived in grace and favour accommodations at Kensington Palace, and held one of the most trusted positions in the British government. The Queen consulted me on everything from diplomatic protocol to political crisis management. I'd kept my position private because my family had always made clear that working for the establishment was respectable but ultimately unglamorous, something people did when they lacked the entrepreneurial spirit for real success. I'd also been financially supporting my parents for 6 years. £5,000 monthly transfers they called family trust distributions, and never discussed. My father's property development business had collapsed during the financial crisis. My mother's interior design firm existed mostly on paper. Their Kensington townhouse, their country club membership, their entire lifestyle ran primarily on my salary and James's occasional contributions. 3 days before the wedding, Victoria called. Mother told me you received the invitation. You understand why we structured it this way. You told everyone I'm traveling so you don't have to explain my absence. It's simpler than going into detail about your situation. Edmund's family is very particular about social credentials. They're expecting aristocrats, diplomats, senior government ministers. You work in palace administration, which is fine, but it's not quite the same caliber. I see. Don't take it personally, Charlotte. This wedding needs to project a certain image. Edmund's uncle is a viscount. His cousin serves in Parliament. The guest list includes 2 earls and a baroness. You'd feel completely out of place. At 32, I'd spent hundreds of hours in rooms with royalty, heads of state, and the most powerful people in Britain. I'd felt many things in those rooms: pressure, responsibility, occasionally exhaustion, but never out of place. What if I told you I could attend? I asked. That would be complicated. The seating arrangements are finalized. Edmund's family has specific expectations about who's in the family section. And frankly, Charlotte, you don't own appropriate attire for this level of event. It's black tie, proper morning dress for the ceremony. These aren't things you can rent. I understand. Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Perhaps we can do lunch after the honeymoon? Just family. She hung up before I could respond. What Victoria didn't know was that Queen Elizabeth II had been personally invited to the wedding. Lord Hartley's family had centuries-old connections to the crown, and Edmund's grandmother had served as a lady-in-waiting in the 1960s. The Queen had RSVP'd that she would be unable to attend but would send a representative from the royal household. That representative was me. I'd initially planned to delegate the appearance to a junior staff member, not wanting to overshadow Victoria's day. But being told I wasn't suitable for sophisticated company had changed my perspective. I called the master of the household's office. Regarding the Hartley wedding this Saturday, I'll be representing Her Majesty personally. The morning of the wedding, I dressed with meticulous care. The outfit had been selected with help from the Queen's dresser. A silk dress in royal blue, a matching fascinator, a pearl necklace that had been a gift from Her Majesty for my 5th year of service. The ensemble was elegant, appropriate, and unmistakably from someone who understood royal protocol at the highest level. At 1:15 p.m., a car from the royal household arrived, a Bentley with small royal standards on the hood. The driver was from the Queen's personal fleet, trained in diplomatic protection. This wasn't a private arrival. This was an official royal household appearance. We arrived at Ashdown Manor at 1:45 p.m. The estate was spectacular. Manicured gardens, a Georgian mansion, parking filled with Rolls-Royces and Bentleys. Guests in morning coats and elaborate hats mingled on the lawn, champagne flutes in hand. Security at the entrance was checking invitations. As our car approached, one of the guards spoke into his radio, then stepped back and waved us through to the VIP entrance, reserved for titled guests and dignitaries. I stepped out of the car. The driver handed me a leather portfolio embossed with the royal cipher. Inside was the official message from the Queen, a formal gift for the couple and my credentials as her representative. A young woman in event staff uniform approached, checking her tablet nervously. "I'm sorry, this entrance is for immediate family and titled guests only. The main entrance is Charlotte Pemberton, Deputy Private Secretary to Her Majesty the Queen. I'm here representing the royal household." Her face went pale. "Oh, of course. I apologize. We weren't expecting, please this way." She led me through a private entrance where family members were gathering before the ceremony. My mother stood near the windows, elegant in a champagne-colored dress, laughing with Edmund's mother. My father was discussing something with Edmund's father, probably business connections. James and his wife were speaking with a couple I recognized as minor aristocrats. Victoria stood in the center, radiant in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids making final adjustments. My mother saw me first. Her champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. "Charlotte? You're supposed to be traveling. What are you doing here?" Every conversation in the room stopped. Victoria turned, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and something approaching horror. "I am traveling," I said calmly. "I'm traveling from Kensington Palace in my capacity as Deputy Private Secretary to Her Majesty the Queen, who has asked me to represent her at this wedding." The silence was absolute. Edmund's mother, Lady Hartley, stepped forward, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something like panic. "You're Charlotte Pemberton? From the Queen's private office?" "Yes, Lady Hartley. Her Majesty sends her warmest congratulations and asked me to deliver this personally." I handed her the leather portfolio. Lady Hartley opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten note from the Queen on official stationery, along with a formal photograph signed by Her Majesty and a pair of antique crystal decanters from the royal collection. "We're incredibly honored." Lady Hartley looked at my mother. "Catherine, you never mentioned your daughter works for the Queen." My mother's face had gone from pale to gray. "We didn't. Charlotte never told us she held such a senior position. We thought she did administrative work." "Administrative work?" Lady Hartley's voice had an edge. "The Deputy Private Secretary is one of the most important positions in the royal household. She works directly with Her Majesty on constitutional matters." Victoria found her voice, though it came out strangled. "Charlotte, why didn't you tell us you worked for the Queen?" "I did tell you. Multiple times. I mentioned working at the palace, managing royal correspondence, coordinating state visits. You weren't interested in details because you thought palace administration was unglamorous." Edmund had appeared, looking distinguished in his morning coat. "Charlotte Pemberton? My God, I didn't realize. You're the one who coordinated the Japanese state visit last year? And the Commonwealth Summit?" "Among other responsibilities, yes. That summit was absolutely brilliant. The logistics alone." He stopped, looking at Victoria with confusion. "Why didn't you tell me your sister worked in the royal household?" "I didn't know she never explained that she..." Victoria's eyes were filling with tears, though whether from embarrassment or anger I couldn't tell. The event coordinator appeared at the door, agitated. "I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but there's been a development. Buckingham Palace has just issued an announcement that a representative from the Queen's household will be attending, and they've requested seating adjustments. Protocol requires." "That's me," I said. "I'm the Queen's representative." The coordinator looked at me with relief. "Oh, thank God. We've been in a panic. Protocol requires you be seated with the immediate family front row. We'll need to rearrange. That won't be necessary, Victoria said quickly. Charlotte isn't in the family seating. We told guests she was traveling. There's no seat for her. Lady Hartley's expression turned cold. You excluded the Queen's deputy private secretary from your family seating? You told people she was traveling. She turned to the coordinator. Place Miss Pemberton in the front row with immediate family. Move whomever you need to move. Mother, Edmund said quietly, perhaps we should. The Queen's representative sits with family. This isn't negotiable. Lady Hartley looked at my mother. Catherine, I'm confused. Why would you exclude your daughter from her sister's wedding? My mother opened her mouth but no sound came out. James finally spoke. We didn't understand the significance of Charlotte's position. We thought she lives modestly, she doesn't talk about her work. We assumed it was mid-level civil service. Mid-level. Edmund's father, Lord Hartley, had joined the conversation. The deputy private secretary is one of perhaps 20 people in Britain with direct access to the sovereign. She advises the Prime Minister on constitutional matters. She coordinates with heads of state. This is one of the most senior positions in government. The ceremony was supposed to start in 10 minutes. Guests were filing into the chapel. The coordinator was frantically reorganizing seating. Victoria stood in her wedding gown, mascara starting to run, her carefully planned perfect day dissolving around her. Charlotte, my mother said desperately, can we speak privately? There's obviously been a terrible misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding, Mother. Victoria told me I wasn't suitable for sophisticated company. That I'd feel out of place among aristocrats and senior government ministers. She was partially right, I do feel out of place. But not because I'm beneath this level. Because I work at a level where substance matters more than social performance. You're ruining my wedding, Victoria said, her voice breaking. This was supposed to be perfect. Now everyone's going to remember it as the day I excluded the Queen's representative from my family. I'm not ruining anything. I'm fulfilling my professional duty to represent Her Majesty. If that creates awkwardness, perhaps you should examine why you spent months telling people your sister wasn't worthy of attending. Lady Hartley had been watching this exchange with growing disapproval. Edmund, a word? They stepped aside. I could hear portions of their conversation. Lady Hartley questioning whether a family that would exclude one of their own from important events was the right connection for their family. Edmund defending Victoria but sounding uncertain. The coordinator returned. Miss Pemberton, you're seated front row beside Lord and Lady Hartley. The ceremony will begin in 5 minutes. I walked to the chapel, leaving my family in chaos behind me. The ceremony proceeded, though the atmosphere was strained. I sat in the front row beside Edmund's family, while my family sat directly behind us, close enough to hear Lady Hartley's pointed comments about family values and social pretension. During the reception I was treated as the guest of honor. Lord Hartley introduced me to an earl, 2 viscounts and a junior government minister. Edmund's uncle, the one who served in Parliament, spent 20 minutes discussing my work on constitutional reform. My family watched from a distance, unable to approach through the crowd of people wanting to speak with the Queen's representative. Victoria's perfect wedding photos now included me in the front row, wearing the Queen's pearl necklace, seated with the aristocrats while my family sat behind like distant relatives. At 6:30 p.m., the royal household driver signaled it was time to leave. I said my goodbyes to Edmund's family, warm, genuine farewells that stood in stark contrast to the stiff acknowledgement from my own relatives. As I reached the car, my father finally caught up. Charlotte, please. We need to discuss this. Your mother is devastated. Victoria is humiliated. Can't we work this out? Work what out, Dad? You've spent 6 years accepting £5,000 monthly from me while telling people I was unsuitable for important family events. You've lived on my salary while treating my career as an embarrassment. His face went white. We didn't know about the money, you never said. You thought I was barely scraping by while somehow able to support you? You never questioned that. We're your family. We love you. We made mistakes, but you made choices. You chose to exclude me because I didn't fit your definition of success. The consequences of those choices are yours to manage. I got into the car. As we drove away, I saw my family standing in the driveway, My mother crying, Victoria still in her wedding gown, James looking lost, my father's face a mask of confusion. By Monday morning, the wedding had become the talk of London society. Not for the venue or the dress, but for the family that had excluded the Queen's deputy private secretary from their own daughter's wedding. My phone had 143 missed calls from family members. My mother left voicemails explaining they'd misunderstood my position. Victoria sent emails about how I'd destroyed her wedding day. James texted that I was being vindictive. I didn't respond. The £5,000 monthly transfers stopped immediately. The lifestyle they'd built while calling me unsuitable? That collapsed within months. Lord Hartley's family, horrified by how my family had treated me, quietly distanced themselves from future social engagements. Victoria's entry into aristocratic circles became significantly more difficult when Edmund's mother made it known she disapproved of families who excluded their own. 3 months later, the Queen personally commended my work during a private audience. Charlotte, your discretion and dedication are exemplary. The household is fortunate to have you. Thank you, Your Majesty. I understand your family has had some realizations about your work? Yes, ma'am. She smiled slightly. Sometimes the most important lessons are the ones learned too late. My family learned that sophistication isn't inherited through titles or displayed through wedding venues. It's demonstrated through character, through integrity, through treating people with respect regardless of whether they elevate your social status. They'd called me not suitable for sophisticated people. They were right. I wasn't suitable for their kind of sophistication. I was suitable for the Queen's.